In West Asia, the sands continue to shift, and the forgotten war is back in focus. We're talking about Yemen, the poorest country in West Asia, with a population of more than 30 million. It has been at war for over 9 years. It's a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and it has ravaged the country. A record number of civilians have been killed, tens of thousands have been injured, and more people than ever are going hungry. 80% of Yemenis now depend on humanitarian aid. Yemen is a small West Asian nation and a site of grievous suffering. This desert nation on the edge of the Arabian Peninsula shares its borders with Saudi Arabia and Oman. And its neighbors, along with other countries, have literally backed it into a corner. We are talking about Yemen's forgotten war. It has been the country's undoing. At least 14% of its population have been displaced. Thousands killed, 70% of them are children. And most Yemenis are going hungry.
We were playing when a shell was fired from there. It hit us. I found myself in the hospital the next day. I tried to reach for my leg, but my father told me I was injured and I lost it.
There are a few organizations that hand out a ration of wheat every 3 months. It's handed out to some families only. Some organizations do not include this area in their aid handouts at all. The residential part of the city is in the line of fire and no aid has entered for a while.
With the lack of support provided to Yemen, the crisis will grow bigger and people's needs will multiply.
Yemen has been called the world's worst humanitarian crisis. But now there may be a ray of hope. A hope for ceasefire and a potentially permanent one. But first, let's quickly understand the conflict. Yemen's civil war began in 2014. It was started by Houthi insurgents. These are Shiite rebels with links to Iran and a history of rising up against Yemen's Sunni government. They took control of Yemen's capital, Sana'a. They toppled Yemen's Saudi-backed government in 2014. This invited intervention from foreign powers like Saudi Arabia. They economically isolated Yemen and launched violence against it. Even so, now Houthis control northern Yemen, and they've been fighting a Saudi-led military alliance since 2015. Yemen continues to pay the price of this proxy war. But now Saudi Arabia wants to talk peace. In fact, talks are on between Riyadh and Sana'a, and the neighboring kingdom of Oman is mediating. Saudi and Omani delegations landed in Sana'a late on Saturday.
We are continuing and making these efforts in the context of achieving just peace. First, we affirm our firm position adhering to our just cause in more than a speech and stance. Our just demands include stopping the aggression completely.
Their commitments have not been made public yet, but reports say they're looking at lifting a Saudi-led blockade on Yemeni ports. They want to fully reopen the Sana'a airport. And remember, Yemen has been working towards lasting peace for some time now. But this is the closest it has gotten to any real progress since the war began. International efforts are also making progress, like the United Nations peace efforts. They've been going on parallelly. They resulted in a temporary ceasefire last year. It was a period of truce. It enabled confidence-building measures, and restrictions on imports were eased. Prisoner exchange programs were held. But the real momentum came when Saudi Arabia and Iran agreed to re-establish ties last month.
At the end of the talks, we reached a conclusion to start a new chapter after 7 years of breaking off relations between the Islamic Republic of Iran and Saudi Arabia. While considering the matters of the two countries and the security and future of the region, to prevent meddling from extra-regional and Western states and consistent meddling of the Zionist regime in the region.
Saudi and Iran are behind this proxy war in Yemen. So if they take a step towards peace, the impact will be felt in Yemen too.
I would expect to see, or I would certainly track any developments in Yemen for the next weeks and months to see if this agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran has any impact on the ground in Yemen, where I think all parties at least the Saudis and the Iranians both probably want to move on.
For a number of years, they have very much been in direct conflict as well as indirect conflict in other parts of the Middle East. And anything that can be done to reduce the kinds of violence that we see in Yemen, in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, between Iran and Saudi Arabia directly is of benefit not just to the people in the region, but also to the world.
Experts say that battle fatigue is clear among all parties. It seems like a war with no end and no fruits either. Can the peace talks, on top of everything else, help Yemen? There is no right answer yet. They can definitely make a dent, but it won't be easy. The political landscape in Yemen is complex. Negotiations could be drawn out. It could be extremely difficult to settle the differences. And Houthis remain the major force here. But they're talking to Saudis in the absence of other parties, including the Al-Qaeda. So while the détente between Saudis and Iran has helped, peace for Yemen will be a different ballgame.